So ladies and gentlemen, we have a program before us that is going to guide our deliberation here. To start with, my name is Henry Chien. I'm the programs director at CARA. Those of you here in CARA for the first time, it's the Kenya Alliance of Resident Associations, and we've been around for quite some time, I think 14 years. And our interest is really to try and look at how do we mobilize the public, the taxpayers, to enhance access to public service delivery, and to be proactive in being part of the solution to the challenges that we face. Because we believe that the challenges of service delivery cannot be solved by the government alone. We as taxpayers, we have a role to play, and we must be able to understand that role and play it effectively. So that's just briefly, because we don't have time, but for those of you who want to know more about our work and what we do, you can be able to get in touch with us later, and we can be able to provide that information. I think I will take this opportunity to introduce our guests at the high table, and then we can be able to proceed. I think from the extreme left is Professor Peter Waiganjo. Waiganjo is at the University of Nairobi, and also has done a lot of work on issues of transportation and urban planning and many other areas. I'm sure I'll be able to mention that he's going to be our part moderator for a session in this program, particularly on the panel reaction, just to try and make our panelists bring out the issue that we want to discuss. So he'll help me in moderating this particular session. We have Dr. Steve Mogere from JICA. As you all know, JICA has also done quite a bit of work on issues of urban planning, and that includes the issue of transportation. And they are the force behind the Nairobi Integrated Urban Development Plan, the master plan. And of course, we are interested to just hear how they are also trying to link what they're doing with the aspect of transport and urban decongestion, which is the work that the committee and the county government is doing. So he'll make some remarks on their work and how the same links with the TUDC work, and how we can be able to collaborate in moving the process forward. We have our guest, Mr. Evans Ondieki. I'm sure most of you know him. And Ondieki is the County Executive Committee member in charge of transportation issues, roads and public works. And of course, we invited him here just to listen to what we are saying as stakeholders, but most importantly, also to share with us what the county government is planning to do or will do. One, with the report that we are working on as a committee, and secondly, holistically, in addressing a number of urban planning issues, transportation issues, and coming up with a mechanism of collaborating with the various stakeholders in making sure that we have sustainable solutions to the challenge that is facing us in transportation issues. So we'll be happy to hear from Mr. Ondieki and engage him on a number of areas. Next to Mr. Ondieki is Professor Marion Mutugi. Marion Mutugi is the chairperson of the Transport and Urban Decongestion Committee, which is a committee that was formed by the county government through the governor to specifically look at how do we address the issue of traffic congestion in this city. And the committee consists of a number of experts, a number of stakeholders, I think about 10 or 11 in number. I also happen to sit in that committee, and we've been doing quite a bit of work since February this year in just trying to understand what are the issues, but most importantly, how do we address the challenge that we face in this city. So we've been able to come up with a report, which is almost the final report, and our chairperson will be able to give highlights of those reports, the recommendations, and what we think needs to be done moving forward in addressing issues of traffic congestion in this city. Next to Professor, we have Ms. Gladys Gatiba, who works with Green Africa Foundation, and we are interested in what they're doing from the perspective of NMT. They're doing quite a bit of work on non-motorized transportation, and we just want to hear what is it they're doing and how, again, that links with trying to get solutions to the number of challenges that we are facing in this city. So I want to invite Jackie Klom just to make a few remarks before we go to the next session of this. Jackie, please.
Thank you, Henry. I'll be really brief since we want to get into the meat of the discussion today. All over the world, cities face these problems of poor walkability, problems of traffic congestion, road crashes. These are not problems unique to Nairobi. What we do know is that cities that reach out to their universities, to their residents associations, and professionals, and really collaborate closely on solving these problems, tend to do better. And I really want to congratulate everyone who's here on this high panel in particular for really trying to set in motion a process where residents and universities can help the city to solve these problems. And I think within this report you'll find many very good and solid ideas. And so it'll be very interesting to get more feedback and also some ideas on how this can move forward into real changes in this very beautiful city of yours. So I just want to thank you all for taking your time to be here and battling traffic to be here to have what I think is a very important discussion. So asanteni sana, and with that, let's begin.
And I want to take this chance now to invite Mr. Ondieki just to make a few remarks on in regards to the county government and of course in regard to the subject of discussion today. So, Ondieki.
I know most of you are grounded in the sense that you already have most of the information, and it's not fair for me to start telling you a lot of histories that do not make sense. You are all aware that Nairobi started around 1906 when it became a fully-fledged city, and by 1963 it had a population of about 300,000 people, and now we have a population of about, if we do an intelligent guess, it's about 6 million people during the day and about 5 million people in the night, because around 1 million people move in from Kajiado, Kiambu, Machakos, and other neighboring counties. So during the day we have more challenges than during the night. But there's no challenge that you can underrate. So as a city, the governor has put a framework in terms of the integrated development program, which was funded by JICA, which we have actually validated, and which now will underpin development of Nairobi City Council for the next 5 years. Now, in the sector of transport, you do realize that transport is a critical sector because it is cross-cutting. So if you get it wrong in transport, then you get it wrong in all the other sectors, because in most cases they are informed by what happens in the transport sector. So, number one, you have to appreciate that there is no city in the world that has left the management of its transport sector wholly, 100%, to the private sector or private individuals. Because the dilemma you face as a government, as a county government, and even national government, is if you want to create order, if you want to create discipline, and 100% of the operators are managed by the private sector, how do you instill discipline? Then number two is the quality of the drivers. Let us be honest, because if we have to create solutions, then we have to be honest with our past. In the past, people who ended up being drivers of the public sector transport were people who started as touts. They started moving a vehicle. As the driver was going for lunch, the tout moved the vehicle briefly and loaded passengers. Then with time, they learned the skills of moving a vehicle, but they don't know how to drive. They're not competent drivers in the true sense of the term. So they can move the vehicle around. That's why some of us, because I want to be sensitive, I'm also a driver. Some of us as drivers, we are very insensitive. We don't care about the pedestrians. We don't care about school-going children. We don't care about pregnant women when they are crossing on zebra crossings. We don't care about old persons. who have served this country with dignity and diligence when they are closing, it's like we become impatient that they are moving too slow. But we forget the fact that we have a history. These people one day, they were very young and energetic, and they could move very fast. And they have served this country with dignity and honor. But now, they are aging. So we need to respect them. So it is these small, small things that we can do in the transport sector that will help us transform the sector. And I will tell you this, because me, I am not a novice person. I'm a lawyer by training, but I've worked a lot in Nairobi because I've lived in Nairobi for quite a long period. And I've lived in all areas. When I was in university, I was living in Hall 11. I moved to South P, Westlands, then Donholm, and then later I moved to Karen. So I have seen it. I've seen it all. I'm a totally transformed person, having started from humble beginnings to the top. So I am able to appreciate the transformation and evolution of this problem of transport sector in Nairobi, even from an ordinary mind's point of view. And this is the problem. The problem number one is attitude and mentality of driving. We have no respect for other road users. We have no respect for other drivers. Problem number one. Problem number two is the design and the drawings of our road network. This is a network that was meant to feed, if you take Upper Hill, it was initially serving about 100 residents, top of the managers of the then colonial government and later the area government. But now, Upper Hill is the capital center of Nairobi City. It has about, on the average, between 30 to 40,000 vehicles a day passing through that area. And then the road infrastructure that serves that area is the same. So you look at the sewerage system, it has never been upgraded. Now we have buildings which are 36 stories, and we are going to have a sewage like a river flowing from Upper Hill. There is no corresponding expansion of those services to accommodate the new infrastructure. So imagine if there is a breakdown of that system, the whole of South Sea, which is a flat area, will just be flooded with the sewage. So those are some of the basic common sense challenges that we have to address as honest Kenyans, not just in transport, but in infrastructure in a wider context, so that when we are having expansion of existing services and frameworks, there is always a corresponding expansion of the ancillary services, so that they all read from the same script. That is very critical. Now, the third challenge that we have faced is the mentalities and attitude of the officers. You see, we have the old school of thought. We have the emerging generation school of thought. And we have the digital and the other areas. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty, but let us agree that most engineers, once they agree that there is dead weight and live weight, and the structure is sound, they don't like arguments about how you can do it better for the structure to be sensitive to other users. And I will give you an example. We have made a presentation that some of the footbridges, if you see at the footbridges, just a few, the Thika Road, the superhighway, the footbridges lies on a 45-degree. And we have told them, from a layman point of view, that for an old woman who is or an old man who is 60 years, or a school-going child who is carrying 25 kg of books in his back, to rise to 45 degrees fast, and then there's a fall and another rise of similar nature, it is very punitive. And people take it for granted. But that is very for real. That is what discourages our residents from using footbridges. So it's all about changing our entire mentality if we have to move forward. Not just planners, not just engineers, not designers and architects, but policymakers and policy implementers. Because we do a lot of changes in the boardroom, but there's no corresponding change trickling down to the people on the ground who enforce those envisaged changes. So what we are saying, what we can do to make a difference is the simple, small adjustments which do not even cost money. And I can assure you that we are not doing it. The fourth problem that we have faced as a county government is the circumlocutory bureaucratic nature of interaction with donors. You have a project you want to implement which is a quick win, and you are negotiating with donors, and I'm not going to mention names. And then you are in meetings for 1 year, you are in meetings for the second year, you have not even appointed consultants, or if there's a consultant, it comes with a report, you need to moderate it again, and the second year is gone. Like now, our government is almost 2 years old. So literally, we have only about 2 more years to do a good job. And these processes, the road designs, road engineering, road drawings, transport re-engineering, is an exercise that is slow and tedious and cumbersome. So you need time to be able to change people's mentalities and attitudes so that they accept those new approaches. So we are under pressure from time. We are under pressure from meetings with our development partners. We are under pressure from the public who have huge expectations on our ability to deliver services. So you can see we are being bunched from all directions. And we are saying we have what it takes. But you see, we need to know that we are operating within a given time framework. So if our development partners can also be fair and move things, and I'm saying this deliberately because you look at our traffic management, and the engineer Jama can confirm with me that we wanted to launch this traffic management, intelligent traffic management system in December. But owing to technicalities, now we are in August, heading to September. Still, we are having a system that was installed halfway. We have not managed to get a server for an integrated traffic management system so that we can leave that to the technology to manage it on our behalf. I can assure you that you cannot congest Nairobi using the same old structures. Because if it is the police, and we have to get honest, who are the owners of breakdowns in Nairobi? Who are the owners of Matatu? Let us get real, because we have to be honest with each other to be able to make sound decisions that will be able to bring about change. They are the same owners. So how can you tell them to move away from the very system and structure that has supported their lifeline? So it is like where it's like an exercise in futility. So what we are saying is, I'm glad that the Ministry of Transport has done quite a wonderful job in terms of bringing us together and giving us funds. They gave us 1 billion shillings through Kura to realign roundabouts and junctions so that we are able to facilitate movement of people and the vehicles in a more faster degree than we are doing now. But we are facing some mountable challenges. So enough is about the problems and challenges. And let me deal with one more thing that is very critical before I move to what is the hope that we are doing in Nairobi City County. We've also, from available research, we've realized that 45% of people in Nairobi move by walking or cycling. It's a huge chunk of the population. So if you have seen Nairobi in the recent past, we have been doing pedestrian walks on Uhuru Highway, at Norfolk area, everywhere, Ngara. We are trying to make sure that the walkways, including roads in the estates, which we are doing at the moment, we have integrated walkways to be part and parcel of the road construction. Why? Because we realize that we take sometimes our planning for granted, because we plan from our red carpeted offices, but we forget that this planning must be consumed by the residents who are Nairobians. And we realized that 45% of the people in Nairobi depend on walking and cycling. So we need a good environment. We need a secure environment to allow them to walk. That is why the government of Dr. Evans Kidero, in collaboration with the national government, we are going to light Nairobi by December, the whole of Nairobi, in preparation for the launching of a 24-hour economy. Because Nairobi controls 60% of the national GDP. So the success of Nairobi as a county will be replicated in all the counties, because 60% of the funds collected to fund other activities in the other counties are generated here in Nairobi. So it is very important, instead of focusing on several areas, because if we become realistic, some counties don't have transport challenges because they just have one street through which passes through the county. But when you really come to Nairobi, you realize the president lives here, the deputy president, all cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, managing directors, international agencies. Everything revolves around Nairobi. So for devolution to succeed, 60%, Nairobi has to succeed. And that's why our development model of devolution and other development agenda, we must all work that Nairobi should succeed. If it succeeds, 60% of whatever we are intending to do, either in infrastructure, in transport, and in other sectors of the economy, will have succeeded. That's why we are saying we need support in development of NMTs, or non-motorized transport. It is environmental friendly. It's a physical exercise, so it reduces other challenges of respiratory, heart problems, and diabetes. Then we also need to capture the gendered aspects of transport, because some things we take for granted are gendered. You look at the design of our vehicles, they are not gender sensitive, they are not sensitive to people with disabilities, they are not sensitive with the old people, they don't have space. So it is come, even before you come, and you can do examples, go to country bus. When ladies go there, before they are, you find a lady with a bag and a kid in their bag, and then the bag is maybe forcibly taken away because they are competing for the lady, and then sometimes one can hold the lady on her behinds, and sometimes it is not very pleasant. Let us get real. So some of these things are gendered, and we take it for granted. And we are saying we want to create a structure, a framework that is gender sensitive, that is all or age sensitive. It is sensitive to the school-going children, so that everybody has space. Because if we are able to, this is also critical in view of the coming up of the standard gauge railway. Standard gauge railway is coming; it's now a reality. And then just imagine that the goods that will be delivered in Nairobi now at the moment is 4 million metric tons. It will be 20 million metric tons annually. So there is an implication that we have to build capacity in Nairobi for warehouses, for transport networks, for interchanges, because it is coming. When those goods come, they can't just be stored anywhere. They have to be stored somewhere. So as a county, we must create systems and structures to accommodate the expected, the anticipated volumes, high volumes. We must also create systems and structures in the transport sector to accommodate the new passengers. At the moment it's about 500, it's going to be about 1,000 plus per trip by one trip of railway transport from Mombasa. So all those are things we need to anticipate and to be ready. So yes, we are engaging in a combination of measures to address these challenges. Number one, we are creating new legal frameworks. We have drafted the transport bill, which is going to revolutionize the transport sector and create a public transport system. We are also creating the public Nairobi City Transport Authority, which will be specialized specifically on managing the transport of Nairobi City County. Because I can assure you that unless we have an organized transport system, Nairobi will remain clogged and we can't move around, We can only be mark timing, and we don't want people to come and say we were just like the others. We will just be statistics, because there have been governments before, but we are a different government. The government of Dr. Kitero wants to make a difference in 4 years. So we have strict deadlines, we have strict paying thresholds to be ready by 2017. These organizations and structures will be ready and operational. We hope by next year there will be an organized public transport fully controlled by Nairobi City County, so that people can begin to see a difference. People can compare, people can have an option. You cannot have an option where there are no choices. Now we are all dragged into one choice, which is the chaotic choice. And we have said we are not a government of chaos, we are a government of order. Now, we have also drafted the taxis bill 2014, because we believe strongly that part of the congestion in Nairobi City CBD is because taxis have transformed the CBD into a garage. They just come and dump their vehicles there, and somebody goes to shop in Canberra. He stays for 3 days. So long as there's somebody paying for him the daily parking rates, they don't mind. So we are saying Nairobi is a business hub, and we want it to be that a business hub center. And people should be able to move and get space to park their vehicles. Or those people who want to do other things are able to come and do their business. So what we are saying is this. Transport is a devolved function. So we have no option as a county other than to put a proper working transport system, because Nairobi receives more than 150,000 vehicles on a daily basis, and this is not easy. Then you realize the bylaws we are using now, most of them were formulated in 1935, when the number of vehicles coming to Nairobi were maybe less than 3,000. So that is a reality that we must deal with. So part of the legislative framework is one of the changes that we intend to bring across. The other change we are introducing is the integrated development program, which brings a new land use, so that every development as a component of the land use. You realize when you go to Europe, you go to Japan, you go to China, the roads are in 3-4 deckers. So there is a basement, there is a ground floor, there's first floor and second floor, and they are all working. And you see, land is a very motive issue in Kenya, and moving people is not easy, and roads occupy land. So we are integrating this process so that we don't have to interfere with people's land. We can always use the space above or the space below. So, but that is a very costly exercise. That's why we are saying we need development partners also to come up with innovative ideas. With those few remarks, I am also proud to associate myself with the findings of Nairobi University, who have done a very abundant route identification, and then they have come up with a map. And as you know, information is power, information is security. If your population has proper information, they can be able to make intelligent decisions and informed choices. But if you don't have information, it is very dangerous, and it can pose it has a security implication, because you can go to an area which you can avoid. So we are going to have a system that is organized, and I forgot to mention that we have also drafted the Residents Bill 2014, Residents Association, Residents and Community Bill, Residents Association and Community Bill 2014, which will empower Residents Association to do some of the basic things in the estates, because we have come to the reality that Nairobi is too big, and if we were to say that the county government does everything, that's not realizable. 80%, 90% they can remit to the county. So we are a government that believes in empowering other stakeholders to do things, because let us not ride on the false assumption that we can do everything for 5 million people or 5+ million people. We want to each and every person to realize their full potential, and the best way to do that is to allow them to exploit their full potential. And that is the essence of good governance. With those few remarks, I wish to associate fully with what you are doing, and I invite all the stakeholders who are adding value to this process that you will receive maximum support from the Nairobi City County Government. Thank you very much.
The chair, members of CARA and the Governing Council, and ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and the pleasure of the Transport and Urban Decongestion Committee to present this report. You will recognize that, or we recognize that the report, the interim report, that the interim report is a document that is almost 200 pages. So we will just give the highlights. This is a bit about the mandate of the committee and how it started and what it's supposed to do. And in a nutshell, the committee was supposed to collect stakeholder views, the views of Nairobians regarding the transport situation. I want to highlight this bit, that this is in compliance with a constitutional requirement in this article that says that one of the objects of devolution is to give powers of self-governance to the people and enhance the participation of the people in the exercise of the power of the state in making decisions that affect them. So it wasn't just something to do, it is something that the Constitution envisages, and we wish to recognize that. These are members of our team, and as you can see, there is Joyce. Oops, sorry, this is technology, I'm a bit analog. Am I going back or forward? Forward. The vice chair is not with us now, he should come. Joyce Simitu, Dr. Simitu is here with us, Joyce, and she is a business person in the transport sector. There is also Ann Nicklin, who is a businesswoman and works in the arts. And of course, there was Francis Munyambu, who is the county head of the Inspectorate and Compliance Department. There is Henry Ochieng, who is our host today. There was Tony Karemi, who represented the taxis. Dixon Bugwa, the Matatu Welfare. Barnabas Morocco represented the PSV Union SACCOS. And Simon Kimtai, chairman of Matatu Owners Association. So, and of course, there was this technical team here, 3 engineers, and there was a secretariat. The methodology of this survey was on the causes, effects, and possible solutions to the traffic decongestion problem in Nairobi. This was a stratified sampling, a random sampling survey, and you can see all those details if you are scientifically oriented. And we put in advertisements in the electronic and print media, and the data collected was collected in all these manners. And there were several thematic subcommittees of the committee, including the demographics, the regulators, the public hearings committee, data handling, procedures, and literature review committees. We will go to the results. These were the demographics. I'm a teacher, so even without this, you can hear me.
We're recording. So.
Oh, you're recording. Okay. Sawa sawa. So maybe I can hold it.
Yes, please.
As you can see from the demographics, in terms of age, over almost 80% were aged between 21 and 50, and this mirrors the demographics of this country. So this assured us that it was representative. In terms of who these people are, we call it the stakeholder status. As you can see, about 70%, over 70% were employees, both in the formal and in the informal sector. In terms of where they resided in Nairobi, which was also important for us because as a county, we wanted to ensure that was from, the people are from everywhere in the county. These are the 17 constituencies or the districts in the city, and you can see that they were all represented. I want you to note these non-residents, that about 17% say they did not live in Nairobi, just like our county executive has told us that between 1 million and 1.5 million of the people work in the city but do not live there. As per the number of years that they lived in the city, we wanted to ensure that they were well informed to answer our questionnaire, and as you can see that between, this is 30, this is another 30, about 70% had lived in Nairobi for over 10 years. So we believe that they were well versed in the affairs of the city. We asked them, in a week, how many times do you go to the Central Business District? You can see, again, over 80% came into the CBD over 5 times. Many of them came into the city more than once a day. About 15%, 14% came to the city more than once a day. We asked them how they get into the Central Business District, and as you can see, over 60% use the public transport, the matatus and the minibuses, and you will also note that the people who walk were underrepresented, considering the statistics of about 40% walking. We asked them what corridor they access the CBD. And as you can see from information that has come from other studies, the majority or the largest proportion, representative proportion, comes in through Jogoo Road, followed by Thika Road and Mombasa Road. Now, this is interesting. We asked them several questions to figure out the role of congestion in the accessing the city, the CBD. We asked them on a work day, vis-a-vis a holiday or a weekend, how long they took to get to the CBD. As you can see, only 6.1 say that they got into the CBD within less than 30 minutes on a weekday, while over half say that they got into the city in less than 30 minutes on a public holiday or on a weekend. So the rest is really just confirming that there's traffic congestion. Of course, we did it to confirm it, we know it, we have experienced it, we even experienced it this morning, didn't we? This is a slide showing the traffic congestion in the city as we know it today. Now, this is the roundabout at Uhuru Highway, Haile Selassie. I want you to note a lack of giving way. Maybe it is an issue of signage, maybe it is an issue of indiscipline, I'm not sure. I have my views, but they are not important at this point. Now, this is showing, this is looking from retail market, looking down towards Ikomba. I want you to note a mixture of public transport, of private cars and pedestrians. This is at Hilton. As you can see, this shows that a lack of giving preferential access to high occupancy vehicles. We asked them, who do you consider to be the most responsible for traffic congestion in the city? And top of the list, Nairobians say it's matatus. Minibuses, now minibuses and matatus, the differentiation is a bit vague, but together between matatus and minibuses, you can see they hold the highest representation, closely followed by private vehicles. I want also you to note that third were pedestrians. Then we asked them about discipline. Discipline. Who do you consider to be least disciplined in respect to traffic congestion? And again, the same characters, who are the personal vehicles, closely followed by matatus and minibuses, But I also want you to note, for the very first time, heavy commercial vehicles came onto the screen. Now, my personal experience, and probably your personal experience, is that at a roundabout you are all stopping because the lights are red, but what happens to the trucks? They just come through. I also want you to note that also for the first time motorbikes featured, and again we noticed this ourselves. Then we asked them, where available, do pedestrians use the pedestrian crossing and footbridges? I want you to note that over 60, actually 80% say they only sometimes or rarely or never use these facilities. They are there, but they are not really used. And we asked them, why? Why do you think they don't use these facilities? And on top of the list was ignorance on road safety, followed closely to that Nairobians are in a hurry and are lazy to climb the footbridges, emphasizing what our transport executive has told us, that maybe infrastructure plays a role. I know I have a problem with my knees, and I am not sure about that 45 decline. It was also followed by lack of road safety awareness and not strategically placed and so forth. We also asked them, do motorists stop to let pedestrians have their way at designated crossings? And over half say only sometimes, and if we combine this, we're getting again 80% that the motorists do not defer to the pedestrians. We asked them about the public transport vehicles, matatus and minibuses. Do they stop at stages to drop and pick passengers? Do they comply to the drop and pick designated places? And of course, you can see that again, we're talking of 90%, they say only sometimes, rarely or never. This may sound a bit obvious, but it is nice to have other people say it, Nairobians say it, because this is their city and we ask them what causes this issue and we want them to tell us. Sorry. Do motorists obey traffic lights and traffic or police marshals? As you can see, again, almost 80% say only sometimes or rarely or never do they comply to the traffic lights. But this is interesting that they seem to comply more to human control than non-human control. And we asked them, who among the road users are the people who least obey the traffic lights and the traffic police? And on top of the list were personal cars, that those are the ones that least obey. This was quite surprising because we tend to blame the matatus, and I assure you that this was good news to the members of our committee who are in the public sector. The matatu and they say, yes, we've always known. Huh? Okay, but I also want you to note this one. And these are the heavy commercial vehicles. And the heavy commercial vehicles came number 2 here. And we asked, what in your view are the causes of indiscipline on our roads? And top of the list was lack of awareness and ignorance of traffic rules. Now, this is interesting because we want to assume that traffic laws and traffic rules are straightforward, and road users, especially the motorized road users, are aware because they did their training to get their road license. They didn't. We'll capture that. Yes, we know that there may be an issue there, that they may not really have gone through that training, and maybe they have gotten their license in some other means, and therefore this reflects that. And next was corruption and bribes between traffic police and drivers. Now, this last week, my family, we traveled out of town, and we were sitting at the back with my roommate, who is my husband, and in front we had a driver and our son, and we were stopped by the police. And they came and they looked, and the driver and our son had their safety belts on, but at our back we were sitting without the traffic light, the safety belt, and we were fined on the spot, and I must tell you that 1,000 shillings was painful. Now, corruption and bribe between the traffic police and the drivers. If you feel that you can get away with it, maybe you are being careless. The third was arrogance of drivers and conductors. Now, this was an open question in the questionnaire, meaning you could write anything, and we analyzed it from that. So, arrogant drivers and conductors. Now, we also noted that the public transport system of matatus and minibuses is low capacity. Matatus carry 14 people, and minibuses 23, 25. Is that really high capacity? Maybe not. And those are the recommendations. Then, regarding indiscipline, there is inadequate or there is gross indiscipline, lack of courtesy and violation of traffic rules and regulations, and all of those. Road users, particularly pedestrians, may be ignorant of traffic laws and regulations, and those are the recommendations. Actually, one of them is that there's somebody from NTSA. Yes, yeah, maybe you can look at that because there is one there. The National Transport and Safety Authority should develop a testing curriculum for drivers implemented through testing centers devoted to the county. Maybe these drivers, we need to test them. They may have driving license, but I am a teacher, and I have a problem with people who have certificates without the commensurate knowledge. That's it. There is corruption of road users and enforcement officers. Is that news to you? No. Regarding the scheduling of schools, work and school timing, the following observation. All of us need to get where we need to get at 8 o'clock. Even Kara asked us to be here at 8 o'clock. So we are concentrating the traffic. Now, it's interesting because those of you who have traveled to various parts of the world, you know that there is staggered hours. But just reinforcing the issue of public participation. I remember we had one of the public hearings at Kangemi, and I went to that particular one, and one mama came with her little grandchild, and she was a mama mboga. She says she comes to the city, the CBD every day to Marikiti, buys hamburger, takes it to Kangemi and sells it. And she said, from my view, she was semi-literate because she couldn't even view the questionnaire we had to administer it. And she said she does not understand why her grandchild needs also to get to school at 8. She says his child wakes up at 5. Why doesn't she go to start at 9? I mean, she only does 5 hours. So it's the same story. Number 6, regarding land use, policy and planning, that there is concentration of services in the city center. Now, those of you who, like some of us, grew up in this city, we know there were times that to get to the bank, you had to come to the CBD. Do you remember those days? Do you remember the days that the only supermarket was Uchumi or Nagakani Walk? Yep. Yes. So there is no comprehensive urban transport policy, and there is a shortage of accurate and adequate traffic data. Signage, automation, and centralized electronic control, these are the observations, and that there is poor synchronization and signage of the traffic system. You are at a roundabout. A roundabout is like this table. I'm trying to go that way, you're trying to go that way, it's trying. you have observed that there are people who seem to be given preferential treatment, that especially when the traffic police or marshals are there. Even before 5, 6 cars get into the roundabout and out, you are stopped. But those ones seem to get, so what actually informs that decision? It should be informed by some objective system of build-up of traffic, time, and so forth. And that is, and we have recommended that there needs to be an intelligent transport management system, like Wanondieki talked about, and the human factor should be limited, or actually, kabisa, eliminated. You have had stories, and we had them, that you can actually call a traffic officer, don't quote me, and you can ask them, akufungulie njia unaenda airport na haraka. You have heard those stories, isn't it? So he says, I am now at Museum Hill, I'm going to the airport, nifungulie nini? Njia. You even had some people who say that the hawkers who sell us all kinds of wares are in collusion with some of these people, so that you are stopped for just a little longer so that they can transact their business. We do not know. It's nice to do a survey because you hear very interesting things, isn't it? We talked about a control center. We have seen the cameras. Now, I am not sure what those cameras are supposed to capture. They could capture traffic information. They could also capture safety information. They could also capture crime. But who controls that center? Is the control center at the police headquarters? At the county police, at the traffic police headquarters? Is it at City Hall? Where is it? And we're going to talk about this later, because the best practices worldwide is that should be in a centralized authority, like what the county is doing now, Nairobi City County Transport Authority, where everything pertaining to transport is concentrated, but the police and any other people can have access on a need-to basis, but not to control. The parking charging system is currently manual. I park in the city, and you know you can park for free. But even when you pay the 300, your vehicle is not safe, because the parking boys or the parking, they are not boys anymore, they are men and grown-up women, and they are not looking very friendly until you negotiate with them. Otherwise, you get your side mirror gone, despite the fact that you pay the 300. Number 8, the legal mandate for efficient decongestion. We observe that it falls in many, 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 many hands, including some of your people, NTSA, Kura, Kera, Nani, Kena, ministry, county, police, traffic department, and many other non-authorized people like matatu touts, like parking boys, Mungeke, and others. So, like we say, that as a best practice, that should be in one authority. For example, when the traffic marshals arrest you, if they can, I don't know if they can, but if you do not comply to what they are saying, what can they do to you? Do they have power to arrest? Maybe not. Regarding implementation, these were observations. There have been many, many, many plans, many, and very little implementation. And lack of timely implementation leads to obsolete recommendations and informal studies. So it's like a never-ending story. You know, it's like making clothes for your children, but by the time you finish, they have outgrown them. So you need to make others. And those are our recommendations. our recommendations are 9. We group them into 9 groups according to our mandate and our terms of reference. I want to bring in this slide here to show the build-up of the population in Nairobi, as was quoted by Honorable Ondieki, from when the city started in 1906, where there was just over 10,000 people, to the last census in 2009, where it was 3 million. We are told now there are about 5 million people during the day and 4 at night. The projected population by the year 2025 is 5.8 million. And we are told that out of this, there are 300,000 vehicles in Nairobi estimated, and Jogoo and Outer Ring roads have about 87,000 of vehicles every day. That Nairobi is the 4th most painful commuter in the world. Painful, and you know that pain. That the gridlock in Nairobi is described as the largest parking lot south of the Sahara and north of the river Limpopo. Just parking. And that it has been estimated that there's 50 million shillings daily lost on fuel consumption and 37 billion shillings annually lost. I put in this slide, which puts it together. We tend to think of traffic congestion as a loss of productivity, fuel, time lost, but actually there are health and environmental effects of congestion. Number 1, there are airborne particles from the diesel exhaust, and they have health effects of acidic gases and volatile hydrocarbons that go into the lungs and may actually be carcinogenic. Carcinogenic means cancer causing. We keep on asking ourselves why there is an increase in cancer. Maybe you have part of the answer here. In terms of the environmental effects, there is soiling of building and in reduced visibility and a bad odor. Sulfur dioxide is another pollutant, and it is from fossil fuels and diesel exhaust, for example. It is responsible for bronchitis, bronchospasms in asthmatics, and respiratory irritation. I am actually one of the people who really gets those kind of things. The environmental effects, it is the main constituent of acid rain damage to plant and aquatic life. Green Africa, yeah, there you go. Nitrogen oxide is a pollutant from motor vehicles, and it causes respiratory irritation, and again has been attributed to 1/3 contribution of acid rain. Carbon monoxide is a byproduct of incomplete combustion, and most of our cars do not have complete combustion, including mine, and it causes reduced oxygen to blood, causing headaches, impaired concentration, angina, arrhythmia, cardiac arrest, and retarded fetal growth. In terms of the environment, the oxidizers to carbon dioxide and contribute to the greenhouse effect and global warming. The ozone layer. Phytochemical reaction between the nitrogen oxide and hydrocarbons cause all these things and all these things. I want to talk about benzene. Benzene is a chemical that is a well-known carcinogen. Actually, you can elicit cancers in experimental animals by exposing them to benzene. And this is a byproduct, a pollutant of emissions from evaporated petrol engines in petrol stations and in cars, and it is a confirmed and well-known carcinogen. Heavy metals. From exhaust fumes, particles from the wear and tear of our vehicles, causes hypertension, cancer, and child development impairment. And it causes, it enters, these heavy metals enter our soil, into water, and enter into our food chains and enters into our bodies. And some of these, like lead, are known carcinogens. Psychological and physiological effects of traffic congestion. The psychosocial effects. It leads to frustration related to being in confined spaces and courteous, inconsiderate road users, fatigue, and so forth. Now, we we were told that if you use public transport in this city, sometimes there is sexual harassment. Many times actually. Touching, they're helping you to get into the matatu, but they're also touching you in areas that they should not really be touching you. They talk to you in different ways that are not really acceptable. Sorry. This is associated, you're in confined spaces. Even if you're in your car on the road, the people around you are not your friends. You have not chosen to be with them, but they are around you. You've been in cars, driving, and people are looking at you in manner that maybe you are not really comfortable. This is associated with fatigue, digestion problems, and so forth, and it culminates in increased heart rate, reduced concentration, and increased reaction times. The physiological effects that are harmful to the body, especially if experienced on a recurrent basis, are anger, and this anger leads to release of stress hormones into the blood system. This is something that has been very well studied, that it places the body in a fight, fright, or flight mode. And now, because there's these levels of hormone adrenaline into the blood system and you are not using it, it leads to stress, being anxious, agitated, your heart beats faster, and without the expected action. Now your body is ready for action, but there's no action because you're just sitting there. It is harmful to the heart and vital functions of the body, and it is similar to driving under the influence. In terms of your reaction times, in terms of your impaired decision making, and so forth. And this is one of the extreme, is the road rage that has been observed, which is an extreme aggressive behavior leading to all these kind of things, and it leads to drivers overestimating their own driving skills, believe that other users are less inadequate, tend to be reckless, therefore taking unnecessary risks, escalates into loss of concentration, and results into these kinds of things. This is not news to you, you have experienced it, isn't it? Yes. After driving through traffic, by the time you get to your designated area, you actually feel tired, right? Do you? Yes. 2 hours. These are a few things that we put in here. The Great Sao Paulo traffic of November 15, 2013 is the 6th worst traffic jam that was observed, and it set the record at 309 kilometers. People just sat there in traffic and waited. The other one is the Beijing world record of the worst traffic jam was found in China, where there was a total gridlock with vehicles at a virtual standstill over 100 kilometers, and it lasted for 11 days. You remember that one? Yes, thank you. We are saying that this is not the worst it can get here, it can get worse, unless we put in measures. Now, this slide is about what you can do. This is Los Angeles, and this is the segregated lanes and non-segregated traffic. Now, these segregated lanes, this lane here is for high occupancy vehicles, which have preferential access. Okay. Now, this is Los Angeles. This is Bangkok, and I want you to note a mixture of various road users, including motorbikes and so forth. But this is really nice. Taipei, Taiwan, where the motorbikes have taken over. This is Nairobi, rail transport before and after. We know these stories, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. This one, I want you, if we can go back, you will see that very few people have been able to use the rail transport from Sioki, Maui, Maradaima, and so forth. And one of our recommendations, of course, involved that, to increase that kind of system. but again under the one authority, so that because the railway people are also part of the transport system in Nairobi, and they are not under one umbrella. This is the proposed shuttle bus route in Nairobi. The Nairobi City County told us that they have actually looked at it, and they are thinking that all public transport, the matatus, etc., should all terminate at designated places outside the CBD, and then they get a shuttle bus that is fairly cheap and that just goes round and round without stopping too much. And one of the designated places at the Globe Cinema, where traffic from Thika Road will terminate, Thika Road and Kiambu Road will terminate there, and the shuttle bus will go that way. The other one is at Budurwa, the other one is the railway station, and this is interesting that from Gong Road and from, Gong Road, that they have thought that just come into Uhuru Park, get in, drop at the pavilion, and out, and that kind of thing. This is about parking. And one of our observations was our parking system is not very, very efficient. This is the parking lot that we understand is owned by the county between GPO and Barclays Plaza. Between GPO and Barclays Plaza, next to Kipande House. You can see how they're parking there, but you can see that actually you can park in a parking silo, and if we just took 1, 2, 3 space for 3 vehicles and take this space for 3 or 4 vehicles, you can see that in that space of 4 vehicles there, if we translate it into that space, we can fit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 vehicles. So this is one of our recommendations of PPP, where the private KEPSA, again, and whoever else who wants to make money, this is the way to go. It doesn't really have to be the county, but anybody can do that. We identified things that the county can do maramoja. They need very little money to do it, the legal framework is in place, and small things that can bring great reward. Number 1, strict enforcement of route licenses. That is the public transport. Restriction of cargo deliveries at night or the weekends in the CBD. Why do people in Nakumat who deliver the stuff we buy during the day, why do they have to deliver it during the day? They can do it at night. Road repairs can be done at night. But also to do that, security needs to be beefed up. But that's a straightforward matter. Reorganization of taxis through zoning, encouraging circulation instead of parking. Designating border and tuk-tuk zones, and the banning of motorbikes carrying passengers in the city center. I understand that there is a task force just working on these borders because it's a new concept. There are new lot of road users, and they seem to operate to be a law unto themselves. Strict enforcement of traffic rules and regulation, and introduction of stiffer penalties for non-compliance. Educate and sensitize road users for using designated crossing points and enforce. This one the county is already doing. One of the people we interviewed said, this is straightforward. How kajo, wakuje na lori yao, waweke at the bottom of the footbridge, ukivuka na miguu, ndani. Ukivuka miguu, ndani. Straightforward. Lori iko, sio iko. Right, and this we thank God, we appreciate that they are already doing this, and we thank God also. Yes. Where are we? Sensitize and enforce the highway code for both motorized and non-motorized vehicles. There is nobody who is exempt from traffic regulations. Roll out highly trained police officers, traffic marshal to man the major roads and enforce adherence to the traffic law. Ensure all PSVs use officially gazetted pick-up and drop of stages, termini, and routes. Clear all road reserves of all kiosks and illegal business. Ensure that Nairobi City County Inspectorate staff work 24 hours a day. Remove street families within the CPD to enhance security and improve traffic. All these quick wins do not need a lot of money. Some of them need no money at all, and yet they can make a big difference. Our summary is that from what Nairobians state and from what we heard and from what we read, traffic decongestion operates under these two conditions: provide safe, efficient alternative transport, and then make it expensive to use low occupancy vehicles. Now, Nairobi County has tried this without this. That's why they asked us to park at 300 instead of 140. Actually, even if you tell us to park at 2,000, we will still come. Because what is our other alternative? We have none. So please provide safe and efficient alternative transport. It is only after this that now you can be punitive. And these are the summary that a mass transport system can be an MTS, bus, high occupancy vehicles, rail, tram, metro, and non-motorized traffic, where you have places you can walk. Safe park and pay stations at the periphery. Once you provide this, sometimes I take that Syokimau, I look at that Syokimau place, and there is good parking. So it is good. Designated lanes for slow lanes for vehicles with few passengers, zoning, tolling, and congestion pricing. Charging us parking per day is nothing. Charge us per hour. If you have provided, when you have provided safe, efficient alternative transport. That is what they do in Dubai, that is what they do in Singapore, that is what they do in other cities in the world. And that money that you get from congestion pricing, from zoning and tolling, then you can use it to subsidize the public transport shuttle system, which even if you ask for 20 shillings from anywhere to anywhere, you can subsidize it with zoning, tolling, and congestion, and then you can charge us parking per hour. One respondent said, in conclusion, he said, I remain, sons and ladies, your faithful citizen, who loses 1 to 2 hours every day in traffic, wasting time and money, choking on fumes and fighting with matatus. I would rather walk down a safe, well-lit sidewalk to my neighborhood transit stop and read my book while I ride the metro to the work. Who wouldn't? We wish to acknowledge many people: the governor of Nairobi, Honorable Kidero, His Excellency Kidero, Honorable Ondieki, the CEC in terms of transport, the various government agencies who input into our report, Kura, Kenha, and so forth, and TSA. The National Traffic Commandant gave us very important information. The traffic person in charge, the traffic police in charge of Nairobi also. The various consultants who have published all kinds of reports through time. We engaged them and they gave us important information. Scholars like Professor Waiganjo and Dr. Orwa, who have done fantastic work that we used. But more important, the Nairobians, over 2,000, who took their time to give us information. And by the way, many of them put in a rider. They say, we've given this information to many people. You're not the first. What difference is it going to make? And we told them, no, we don't work for the county. You're not from the Kajo. We're just citizens like you, Kenyans like you, Nairobians like you, who are collecting that information. We wish to acknowledge all of them. In conclusion, we want to say, a report is only as good as its implementation. We noted that there are over 18 reports that have gathered and continue to gather dust. The earliest was in 1973, the latest was the harmonization study of 2014. And we say, if this is also the fate of this report, this will disappoint people who spend time giving their views, including yourselves. Committee members' efforts will be unexploited, the resources spent will be wasted, and future generations will harshly judge all of us for the mess they inherit. We hope and believe that this will not be the fate of this report. The way forward. The Transport and Urban Decongestion Report, this is the interim report. We presented it to the Transport Committee of the county, and they are preparing to give us their final comments on it. We presented to the governor, to the executive. We are engaging the other stakeholders. We are presenting it to you. We want your feedback. The county. We are also going to do a final report with that feedback. We have also, as the Transport and Urban Decongestion Committee, we are in the process of doing an implementation matrix, and we have done all these committees. We do not want the county to tell us that they don't have the law, they don't have the that, and the that. We are doing that for them. That one they are not paying us, but we are doing it. And then, in terms of the county, really you must implement. Now, Kara, you tell us that your mandate is to provide you have a proactive role ensuring taxpayers get the services they deserve. Nairobians deserve to get to their destinations fast and safe. So please pick that one and run with it. And you're happy you're doing it. Also, lobby and advocacy for implementation. We must hold the county responsible. Now, you and I, as Nairobians, as stakeholders, civil society, we must get involved in policing. We have suggested in one of the implementation, the recommendations, that they can put in a hotline where if I see, you know, like that thing that comes on TV, shame on you, you know, that shame on you business, where vehicles are shame on you, shame on you, where we can capture that information. If I see it and I can send it somewhere, they can even motivate us kidogo and send me 10 shillings for my trouble or something. We must police. Many times we have seen corruption on the roads. And the traffic commandant said, why don't you read the number of the traffic police and send it to us? No, we do not have that control center where that's our role, because Nairobi is ours. For the scholars, like Professor Wenganjo, this professional input is really important. For NTSA, you need to coordinate all players for the time being, because that's your mandate. But with the new transport, Nairobi City County Transport Authority, everything will come under one roof, we believe. For development partners, oops, now what happens when that happens? Oops, okay. This is very serious. Fund another study. Studies are enough. What we need is implementation. Studies are more than enough. Please pick what you can run with and move with it. This report, this presentation will be available to Kara and they can send it to all of you soft. Is that okay, Henry? Yes. Thank you. Here we go. Please mobilize resources, development partner, not for other reports. Reports are enough. Actually, they are more than enough. What we really need is implementation. Pick what you need and run with it. This is our opportunity, you and I, to ensure safe and efficient transport in, Nairobi for generations to come. Thank you. This is what the Nairobi of tomorrow will look like.
Thank you very much. I think I will be very unorthodox and quite different. I prepared something on the remarks that I will make and discuss that with my colleague Chitskawas in the office. But that has been taken by our senior professor, Marian Mutungi. She has explained everything. But I was seated there, I was thinking, not as a JICA representative, but as a Nairobian and as a Kenyan. And I wanted to ask some few questions. That's how unorthodox I'll be. And those who remain behind, maybe the ones screening, if we may allow me, will go and take a cup of coffee. And those who remain behind, then I'll make my remarks. So I want to ask a few questions. Please be very honest to yourself and faithful. How many of us who are seated here, when you came, you used a matatu or a bus? Thank you very much. Now, if I may, those who did not raise up their hand should go outside and take a cup of tea, then we remain behind and have a discussion. But before that, I again ask another screening question. How many of us have been able to read? There's a book, arguably, in the 20th century, one of the leaders, arguably, in the world, who has transformed the country, Singapore, to what it is, the Lee Kuan Yew, about from third world to first world. That is the history of Singapore from 1965 to 2000. How many of you have had a chance to even look at the page of that book, or even hear this old man, this statesman? Quite a few. Thank you very much. I don't want to belabor you with reading. What that gentleman did was not to assume what we are assuming, that people can do what they need to do. People need guidance. And that's what you call a benevolent dictator. He says, very simple thing, say everybody must be clean. So I want everybody to sweep, clean your clothes, pack up, don't dirt anywhere. You know where Singapore is. It's one of the wealthiest nations that we have. So you know how many guys we are going to remain with finally, that then we can have a conversation when I make the remarks. I also want to ask another question. How many of us were, first of all, at about 50 years? To the ladies, I know you remain sweet 18 forever, but about 50 years. Those should have gone out. You know why? When this country got independence, I understand you said you were fighting certain things. This is over 50 years. If we haven't achieved, I tell my father, this is a problem of the senior citizen. But before I do that, I want to ask those of us who were born just before the 1973 report was released, the first plan of Nairobi. At least I fall there. Which means very few people will remain here before I could make my remarks. Lastly, I want to echo one discussion. I made a phone call to the city county one day, and the person I talked to was Evans Ondieki. I hadn't met him. We had a discussion because we were deeply concerned about the problems of Nairobi. And the conversation went like this. Brother, this is Evans now talking on the other side of the phone, because I wanted to have a discussion of what we had referred to as the diversion 2, where we were discussing nothing other than the traffic, the problems of Nairobi. Honorable Ondieki told me, brother, if you can be able to give me 200 billion shillings, you mobilize 200 billion shillings, then JICA will want the chair of the transport, the chair for the development partners, and I was seated there for 3 years discussing the same issues, and so I thought it was my responsibility to make a phone call to the county to ask, why haven't we had a discussion or conversation over what we need to do? Then Honorable Ondieki told me, you are my brother. If you give me 200 billion, I'll sort out the congestion of the city of Nairobi. I said, oh, my brother, verily, verily, truly, I'll tell you, if I gave you 400 billion shillings, you will not be able to sort out the problems of Nairobi, of the congestion. Because congestion is not just about construction and expansion, and I'm so happy, Professor, you mentioned that. So today is your answer, Honorable, that even if I gave you $1 billion US, you will not be able to, just by construction of infrastructure, to decongest the city of Nairobi. We have an experience as JICA. We are now spending over $1 billion US within Mombasa, but we are yet to think and even to probably say that we are going to decongest the city of Mombasa. Now, finally, I will ask those of us who are seated in this room who have been able to read the latest Nairobi Integrated Urban Plan, the new plan. It's in the website, it's in this county government website, is Nairobi City Master Plan. It's open, and the closure, which will be the final closure for any comment, is actually end of this month. And I understand from October there will be a bill put before in the county assembly for its implementation. How many of us have had a chance either to participate or to read that report? Thank you very much. Actually, my comments are almost over. What I think we learned from those questions that I've asked is that perhaps none of us will be able to meet any of these criteria to sit and discuss how and why we haven't been able to solve the problems of Nairobi. As development partners, we have equally has been concerned. Conversations among DPs has been ongoing, and I want to mention particularly 6. So DPs who have been deeply involved in this, that's JICA, EU, African Development Bank, World Bank, KfW, and the French Development Agency, including our UN system. It has taken us a long time, I must tell you, seated around that table, brotherhood, to discuss about transport, to focus people to public transport. It's not easy. JICA, where we were involved in 2004, 2006, from a study of the nutrients, the Nairobi we want, at that time it established that perhaps everybody wants to construct roads for cars and not for people. And therefore, no wonder what we see today. But this had a turning point in 2009 when the Ministry of Transport then came up with the MRTS. That was a turning point for us to start at least engaging. And that time, there was a chart that we needed to look at the 9 corridors. Of course, after that, we have also engaged in looking at the outcome of that report, which I think has culminated to what now is referred to as the harmonization. And I think that was among the last document that Professor mentioned. What do we know about Nairobi? The conclusion of the new plan, and in fact, before I leave there, we established on the study that the city is growing from the west to the east. No doubt about that. There's going to be a lot of functioning of this city in the east than you ever thought. We also established that actually there's a major problem and challenge of the CBD, and that now you know is going to be expanded. And once that happens, that changes the structure of this city. So we have to be aware of that. But I don't want to go to those academic or things that are serious, and people probably sleep in a conversation that we have like this. But what we do know is that Nairobi City is suffering from its own growth challenges. But the other thing that we know from other cities that have dealt with this issue is that we can perhaps be able to achieve public transport if we get strong leadership. That is from the top. Without that, no matter how well our studies are, we will not get there. In fact, the story of Bogota, and people talk about it, it's because of very strong leadership. I've given you the Singapore story. It's not about the studies. We hide under, weak leadership hide under studies and task forces, master plans and all that, because they want to find a room not to implement what has already been recommended, but to find a room of doing certain, other aspects. But I guess that in public transport, what we find out is without strong leadership, we'll not get anywhere. Nairobi now has a planning framework. We have all these reports. I always challenge people, and I think I came here 1 year ago to the car, and I was asked to talk about what different will new plan bring, and I asked all of you, those who are in that, it's your responsibility when the county government comes in place, the Kidero government, they have 5 years of your mandate. Use it as we have done with our Vision 2030. Challenge them. What they are planning within that new plan, within 5 years, how much of that have they implemented? If they meet your expectation, give them 5 years. If they don't, kick them out. That was my request to you. But engage continuously to ensure that they don't do a master plan or they don't do a task force just for the sake of it, as an end to it, but they must have the intention of budgeting. That is when we can make a difference. So in the new plan, and we have said that as JICA and development partners, that without aligning our budgeting process to these plans, whatever we discuss are just plans. just on that note, I remember that at one point we had a serious engagement of discussion on how to develop railway in our country. And we had a long discussion on dualling the northern corridor from Mombasa to Malaba. Lots of discussions. But what then we didn't discuss, where is this money going to come from? And we are glad that the current government did not just talk about the railway, save for any other situations, but they said, this money must come from you. I think for the first time we had a leadership that says, you have to get us the money for us to do it. And I think that is what we expect from the county. If we are going to have the congestion, we are going to have NMTs done, we expect that they have to budget for this. We must be serious about implementation to solve these problems of Nairobi. Let me say what we think from our side. We think that we are getting late for the city of Nairobi. This meeting or this conversation should have happened 10 years ago. We think so. So this meeting is already outdated. We should have had this conversation, and by now we should be implementing. We should also be able to audit our budgets and see how it responds, even what is requested to development partners, because I keep challenging all the government and county guys that JICA does not come and just start to implement. There's no JICA master plan, there's no JICA project. These are government of Kenya projects. So the right question should be to that agency, to the county, how come that you have this plan that prioritizes what Professor said, but what you have requested JICA to do is totally different? This is the question and conversation that we should be able to have. We should also be able to assure consistency of these studies and master plans that are being done. Studies from the national government, studies from the county government, so that we have a concurrence, because the development partner will ask at the national level what are the policies, at the county level what are the policies, and when there is any disconnect and there is a question, then it is easier to get into the analysis paralysis. Now, lastly, in my recommendations or discussion that I will say here is that we have been into these discussions as a Kenyan for quite a long time. The question that I think we need to rightly ask the honorable minister from the county government, are you sure that this report that has been given by Professor Marion Mutungi, you're going to implement it? 100%. Are you having the money to implement that? Or are you having a plan to getting this money to implement it? That he can't answer. It means all of us must challenge ourselves, both development partners, the private sector, the county government, the national government, working together, then that we can be able to see this reality. I do understand, for instance, I pick one point, an NMT program, and I think I've had a conversation with the unit. That is the GIS data, which is probably the most detailed planning mapping that has been done for this country, 1 to 2,500 for Nairobi. 60% of that was mapped in Nairobi. Nairobi Metropolitan wanted to use that data to exactly do what everybody is discussing. They went to the Survey of Kenya, Ministry of Lands then. They asked for 4 million shillings. And they were given this free from JICA. The question then that we asked ourselves is, how possible is it that one arm of government will demand that another arm of government pays before they can access that data? That is unacceptable. In my view, we should be able to agree that if you've done the work like Professor's done, these data should resonate with the true client. And the client that we've agreed in this case is the County of Nairobi. So unless we do that, then JICA, World Bank, everybody will always want to come back to do this study, because we have another sector called consultants, and you are possibly half of your consultants. You earn a living from doing this kind of work. I do. So I wouldn't mind doing another study. So Professor, you'll be wrong to imagine that I will not be one of the guys having a decongestion consultancy 5 years from now if we don't implement it. So one best way is we demand that the open data, and our former president had launched the portal, the national portal. How much do we use that? So that is probably the beginning point for our sharing. Lastly, because I don't want to trouble you on that, is that the new plan, and you notice I'm not going to go what exactly we've done, is an integrated plan. Land use has been taken care of, and there is now a decentralized system that establishes about 9 sub-CDDs. We also are thinking that the strengthening of the planning and control at the city level is extremely very critical. And lastly, like I've said, and I want to emphasize, that in that new plan, a lot of detail have been, a lot of importance has been laid towards sharing data within the city. Unless that is done, then whatever we see here, whatever we hear, and the implementation of the different programs that different development partners are engaged in will not be able to realize the congestion program that we have in Nairobi. Now, my very closing remarks after I ask that is, development partners have established a sub-team, not a committee, a sub-group that looks at Nairobi. And one of the things that we are working with the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure is to look at Nairobi not, as an organ, as not Nairobi City. I know we focus on Nairobi City, but we have Nairobi. If you go to Rongai, where I come from, if I'm telling people I live in Rongai or I live in Earth River and I'm coming to Nairobi, what do you tell your people? Where are you going? I'm going to Nairobi, isn't it? You live in Kiambu, but when you come, you're telling them you live in Nairobi, which means that it is not the county of Nairobi City that we are talking about. It is the Nairobi that is in the minds of the Kenyan, the capital city, the powerhouse of our Republic of Kenya. Therefore, it means that the national government has an equal critical responsibility to this formation of the Nairobi Metropolitan that we are talking about. And a lot of discussions, Wanjao knows here, has been ongoing. And actually, as you know, we must also bear the burden the national government has. On one hand, the national governments want to reduce the number of agencies that exist. On the other hand, here we are pushing to have that. And one of the things that development partners have had engagement with the ministry is to establish an urban transport department within the Ministry of Transport. Perhaps then that department will have to engage with the Honorable Undiek, so that we have a consistent thinking in the way we need to develop and decongest the city. I hope that that will be a good beginning point for the establishment of the Nairobi Metropolitan Transport Authority. Thank you.
And the main focus of the report was to find out what's the status of NMT in Nairobi. And we had to specifically focus on one NMT mode, and we focused on cycling, because NMT is not just walking. NMT is walking, cycling, even skating is NMT. Then we focused on cycling in Nairobi, so we first conducted a baseline survey on bicycle use in Nairobi and focused on 3 roads, that is Outer Ring Road, Waiyaki Way, and Thika Superhighway. And the fact that we were able to gather was just amazing, because every time you're in a matatu or you're in your car traveling to Nairobi or from Nairobi, you will see someone cycling on the road. That we cannot ignore. But how many of them are out there? Or how many are we out there who are using bicycles as our daily means of transport? So amazingly, we realized that there are 3,958 cyclists on this road. To break that down, we had 1,916 cyclists on Outer Ring Road. Waiyaki Way had 1,112, and Thika Superhighway had 930. Well, these 3 roads, only Thika Superhighway has cycling lanes. And most of the cyclists on this road will find that they do not use the cycling lanes. So why? That was one of our questions. Then we also looked at, do we have policies in Kenya or in Nairobi that supports use of cycling? And with that, we visited the transport unit at the Nairobi County government. And one of the officers just amazed us, telling us he's not seen a cyclist in Nairobi. And we were surprised. Because even if you're walking into, or just around County Hall, there are so many messengers, or just someone who will just be enjoying a ride around City Hall. But we realized there are no policies that specifically support cycling in Nairobi and in Kenya. And also in terms of road designs, again gives us the challenge where we are having this development every other day, road development, which is more car oriented than people oriented. Then in terms of the traffic laws, do they protect our cyclists, or do they just say, yes, we have pedestrians and this is how they're supposed to obey the traffic rules? Or do we also have rules specifically for pedestrians and specifically for cyclists on our roads? So some of the recommendations we had were that we have so many cyclists in Nairobi. Are they in association? We have seen, we have Matatu owner associations, we have all this association of road users. Do we have, well, we may not ignore saying that we cannot have a pedestrian association, but well, we can have a cycling association. We are having more funding going into infrastructure development, and in the report it mentioned that there is lack of awareness. How much of this support funding is going into awareness creation, especially for non-motorized transport? Professor mentioned that most of the times what is happening is when we have pedestrian crossing the road under a footbridge, there is someone at the end of the road to arrest them. We saw on the TV just the other day, a woman was arrested and she said, there is no sign that says I should use the footbridge. Well, we may say it's common sense that there is a footbridge, you should use it. But well, common sense might not be common for everyone. So they say, do we have enough awareness creation, or are we putting more of our resources into building the infrastructure and less of it into telling people or educating people how and why to use this infrastructure? So more of it was looking into the challenges that the professor mentioned. We were looking at what then alternative do we have in decongesting Nairobi? Is non-motorized transport one of these alternatives? Is it possible to get a 14-seater matatu, people using a 14-seater matatu, from the matatu to walking, and even Western Ring Road? It's properly done. But where it ends, so does it mean I cycle until Westlands? So after Westlands, where do I go? I cannot disappear in thin air. Where do I go? So we need networked infrastructure for NMT, such that even the conflict, which is among the main challenges some of these users are having, will be elevated. Do we have county laws that support or are incentives towards use of these provided facilities? Not only even in institutions, do we have, like the banks, like let's say Safaricom, have they provided a bicycle parking facility for their staff? I bet there are some of them maybe who use bicycles. So once I use my bicycle from home to work, where does it end? So these are some of the things we were able to identify in this research that we conducted. Something else that has been useful in creating awareness is the media. So what is the media saying about transport? Is it we are having so many adverts on don't drink and drive? Are we saying cycling or walking is cool? Because we need to change the attitude. That is something we have to agree. We need to change the attitude for it to not be a poor man's means of transport, to everyone who would like to use it to use it. What about where we have provided these facilities? We can't ignore that we have cycling lanes on Thika Superhighway, we have on Western Ring Road. Are they properly marked? Do these people know what this marking means? So for example, let me give, this sign is a head start for a cycling lane. We talked to these cyclists and they told us, well, it has been, this is a bicycle sign. For them, it means I should park my bicycle there. That's the translation. So this just shows however much we are investing in infrastructure, we have to as well equally invest in awareness creation. Thank you.
On behalf of the Environment Programme, I'd like to thank Henry and Cara and the committee for putting together what I think is a really great report. I had one quick question and then one comment. The question, actually I'll start with a comment. The comment was, I think we've heard a lot about NMT, and I think the data in the report summarizes well some of the NMT issues that we see in Nairobi. But I do feel that in the recommendation section, there could be more emphasis on some of the quick wins, a lot of which I think have been discussed today anyway. Awareness raising on both sides, pedestrians and drivers, and also incentivizing NMT. So that was my comment on the report itself, and then I had a quick question, which I want to direct towards Nairobi City County Government, so Mr. Ondieki. And my question is, do you think that Nairobi City County Government would be interested in leading the effort to design and implement an NMT policy for Nairobi? Because I think that we've been having this discussion for years about the importance of NMT, and whilst it is coming into parts of implementation, parts of design, parts of broader policies, I think we do need a standalone NMT policy to ensure that a lot of the issues we've discussed today are taken seriously.
Carly Quinanga, Unit Transport Team. Just a comment and observation really for the team who are developing the final report about the role of the matatu industry in the plans for decongestion of the city. For all the folks of the matatu industry, they are almost, if you like, single-handedly at the moment supporting the economy and moving millions and millions of people around Nairobi every day. And whilst there's definitely a role in removing the matatu industry for some of the decongestion, I think we could really make use of that team of matatu experts. They know a lot about the city. Even once we have a bus rapid transit system, they'll still have a big role to play in offering a feeder system. And I think if we could find a way within the report to include them in the ongoing consultation process so they actually feel involved, maybe learning some lessons from the South Africa experiences, then I think that would be a very key point. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Helen Musalia. I have a few comments and one question. Obviously, a lot has been said earlier, but at the end of this whole process, it would be interesting to see children not waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning when they're going to school. That really disturbs me, and the children getting to school at 5:30. Some of the quick wins, and which I think can help with decongesting traffic, is registration of cars tied to insurance license renewals. If the laws are made in a way that when you're doing your insurance every year, you have to have your car registered up to date. This, I think, will help improve the fines. People who are jumping lights can be fined via email and or post office, but I think email should be mandatory. It's free of charge anyway. If you go to countries like Dubai and South Africa, which I have visited, attitudes of the drivers is impressive. Yes, there are a lot of people who jump lights here in Kenya, and it's really bad. And you've talked about putting up a policy to try and help turn around how individuals speak. And I think there are some courses which are also extremely powerful. in helping people change their attitudes, and it's actually an integrity issue. And one of the courses that I would recommend, which is running in September, is the Landmark Forum. It's a very, very powerful personal development course, which if people in government and civil society and generally Kenyans can do that course, if it can even be embedded in the curriculum of the country, then we can see a change and shift in the way people see things. So integrity is key. Police stopping trailers on Uhuru Highway causes traffic jams. It's not acceptable. When we look at 1AV, which is one of the recommendations that you put in your report, you talked about reducing roundabouts and that you want to replace them with manned traffic lights at the interchanges. I want to get somebody to kindly look at putting in overpasses instead, so that the roundabouts of Uhuru Highway that meet Langata Road, Nyayo Stadium, Haile Selassie, and the GPO route, those are where I see a lot of traffic. If people could actually just drive on top, like from Upper Hill, you drive on top if you're going on to the airport or that sort of route. Footbridges. It's a good thing to have footbridges, and a lot of people are not using them, and you cannot really blame them for that, as much as one person said it's common sense. Some of the footbridges are actually not properly usable. They're trying to climb the one that's on Haile Selassie Avenue. It's actually, the steps are high. You have to lift your leg, and it's not really comfortable. So if we could look at what University of Nairobi has done, they have a walkway, which is a low gradient. So whether you have arthritis or have any other issues, you can actually walk comfortably and go onto the top of the footbridge or walkway. So let's not just put footbridges everywhere and expect people to use them.
I think I'll need to cut you.
Okay.
They're going to be around, so please don't, let's also give time for...
Yeah, and the last one is just the 2-level buses, I think, can help reduce congestion.
From Westlands Informal Supplement Resident Association. And I think when we talk about the traffic congestion, we normally just talk about here in town. But with me, I want to talk about Kangeni, because I reside that side. There we have only one bridge, footbridge, in between all from Kabete police station. You will get another one at Kangeni. Now, in between here, we have people living there. Recently, we saw people chasing. I understand they were police and city county because they need traffic. They were chasing ladies and children when they were crossing. In fact, we were stranded. Always, if you see, now something just has happened abruptly. We were not aware that there is something of the case. And I understand in our constitution there is something called citizen participation, where we normally say, let us make dialogue before something happens. Because you are very much aware that since the other time we have just been crossing anyhow. Now if something has just come, then you make a policy, let the people know that there is something going to happen. Because now you see, we just came to realize that people were trying now to chase the police, in between the police and the people. Now, there we expected so many accidents, because now people are rushing to escape police, they are escaping the vehicles. Okay, my question is, did you plan before you issued this arresting, whatever you did to Iron?
One observation and one question to Madam Gatiba. During your survey on the cyclists, I don't know whether you resolved what can be done to motivate people to move away from thinking that bicycles are for the poor who cannot afford vehicles, so that at least we have a situation that even if it's 20% or 30%, that of Netherlands where majority people use bicycles. I don't know what motivation you thought could be done so that people can change their mindset. The observation I have is for Bwana Steve. I hope he's aware that Kenya Urban Roads Authority came in that urban department that we're talking about. And what needs to be done is that the counties can exploit this opportunity and interact with the KURA, so that at least issues of urban transport could propel very fast. Thank you.
Very quick. I would have loved to make more comments, but because of time, I'll be very brief. I would just want to ask on the issues of Kokoteni. I don't know if you consider that category because they are also quite a menace in our roads. Did you study them and probably give recommendations on what can be done about Kokotenis in Nairobi? To the representative of the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure and Transport, I know we do not have an urban road design manual that can guide the design of urban roads. It's been a draft for a long time. I don't know the stage at which it is in, so that it can actually look into the issues of inclusive design. Because I would want to represent the persons with disability in this matter. I've done a lot of studies on the persons with disability with regard to NMT and public transport, and I'm aware that even the vehicles that are provided for transportation in Nairobi, the problem is not from the providers, but because of the standards they are following. When do we expect the standards for passenger vehicle standards to be reviewed to include persons with disability, and that includes the infrastructure?
So I'm keen on the involvement of civil societies in the implementation of NMT and also road safety, as well as the transportation, the congestion of Nairobi City, because the other people are doing, like the civil society, they're doing the road safety, their awareness is small portion. How are we involving all of them, as also the government and development partners?
People and goods from one point to another. At times we may tend to confuse it from movement of cars from one point to another. And that may come out in our recommendations in a negative way, where we are looking at the congestion of how can we park as many cars in town as possible, other than thinking of how can we get people out of their cars using other means of transport, be it public transport, be it cycling as was mentioned, or other non-motorized forms of transport. That will require a big paradigm shift. Will require people to think outside the box, other than thinking along the norm. One thing I'm sure of is that the population of Nairobi is going to continue increasing. We're not going to stop that. We're going to have continuous rural-urban migration is not going to stop anytime soon, plus the increasing population within the city. And I do not think that road construction and parking construction is going to match up to that population increase. Therefore, there is the need to think of how can we get people out of their cars, have other means to use to access, to move around the city, safer means that may not necessarily involve the use of the personal vehicle.
Is there a plan to phase out the matatus, the 14-seater? Because you find there was a time when the government wanted to phase them out, because there was no logic in having these very many thousands of 14-seater vehicles, and at the moment they are supposed to install this digital and whatever, and some of them are really rickety. They are old, and you find that drivers and whatever they are complaining about the expense. In fact, they really have to struggle to meet the expense of the day to cover. Now, again, we have also the problem of construction of road reserves in this country. It is a menace because you find developers have encroached on the roads. They have built up the roads so that the roads are so narrow. There's no provision for ambulances and whatever. There are times when the road grid is just bumper to bumper, and when there's an ambulance, there's not nowhere. So people don't even also observe the law in the sense that, especially some leaders, they just grab the land and we end up having legal protracted sagas. So what is the government doing about this?
My name is Patrick Jama. I'm representing Buzi Club. My question goes to Mr. Ongeki, and it's on the non-motorized transport with specific reference to cycling. One, do we have a policy of teaching the cyclists safe road use? Because they also need to know the transport, the traffic rules, etc. And the second one, what are the plans on parking and incentives to provide maybe free parking for them so that we can encourage people to use that system?
We talked about Nairobi expanding towards Athi River and Thika. The other day I went out to Thika with a driver, so I was able to look at what was happening, and there seems to be a grave shortage of recreational land, and there are many schools and many high-rise blocks which are presumably inhabited by people. So some way or other, I think the County Council, City Council of Nairobi should be looking at trying to develop recreational areas on the Thika Highway. Also on the Thika Highway, I can't understand why it doesn't go straight after Ngara and join up with University Way. The enormous traffic jam around the Globe Cinema is utterly unnecessary, and even worse is the traffic jam at the top of Tomboya and River Road. It seems to me there's very little thought given in that particular thing. On the Uhuru Highway, one thing the police don't seem to understand is that the Uhuru Highway is the main road, and yet they keep on holding up traffic from Westlands coming into Nairobi in order to allow traffic out of State House Road, Nyerere Road, University Way, and any other possible chance to stop the traffic from Westlands moving forward. I've been looking at this report and listening while the professor was talking. It does seem to me that it's a first-rate report, but it is a bit repetitive. I think it could be considerably shortened and thus have considerably more impact.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us agree that we have some proposals on how to resolve very complex issues, because some of these issues are well entrenched and they have taken decades to entrench themselves. So we will work and do our best, and that's why we're picking ideas from each one of us, and all of us matter. So I will start with Patrick Wandere. I agree with you entirely that the ignorance of the law is not a defense, and I agree that pedestrians also contribute largely to the traffic snares because they don't observe the traffic rules. So we need a lot of awareness campaigns to change this attitude. But this is a problem that cuts across the stakeholders. It also affects the drivers, it affects the police, it affects the passengers. So we all need to change. Let us agree that we have to change. Now, Lusaka Road is being redone afresh, and it will have a component of pedestrian walks and the cyclist lanes. So that one is already underway. By next year, it will be ready. The contractor is on site, I believe. The remarks from Carol from UN, if I got your name right? Yeah. Leona from UN. I agree with you that NMT is an emerging issue. For a long time, it was taken for granted. But now we are living with this reality that in our planning, if you look at our master plan, integrated master plan, NMT plays a major role and is one of our flagship areas. And I can tell you that we are more than willing to engage with anybody, including yourselves, on how to design an NMT policy so that we are able to move forward. Let me tell you, Nairobi City County government is a government without bureaucracy. You can even walk and see us. We are in office at 6 and we leave office at 9 p.m. Most of us, including the governor. So if you walk in any of that time and you have a serious issue to discuss, we will discuss it and we will deliberate on it and conclude it. Then colleague Koinange has also made very, very, very good observations. I can assure you, colleague Koinange, that in our new transport system, there will be space for matatus and SACCOs, because this is a process that we agree is a new process. No one has the best answers or the only answers. We are all engaged in a process that we want to ease the difficult challenges that each one of us is facing, and I can assure you that, okay, the buses will be here. If I got a deposit of $10 million today, the buses can be here by end of the month, September. But we are working on realigning our budget to be able to meet those expectations. What I can assure you is that most of the people who are going to be some of the supervisors will be drawn from those buses, because as a county, we don't have that capacity to manage. We have the capacity to bring in systems and structures. But to daily management, we have to delegate it to the authority, which we are formulating, which will work with the existing SACCOs. Helen Musari has also given very, very good observations, which we agree entirely, that we need to tie enforcement into renewal of insurance, because everybody has to have an insurance. And I agree entirely that the enforcement on our part has been weak. We are employing a lot of people in that sector to strengthen the sector, and then giving them vehicles. I think the government approved purchase of 20 motor vehicles to empower that unit. Then I also want to comment that the opening up of the southern bypass and the northern bypass will greatly improve traffic flow, because after they become operational, we will be issuing new circulars banning all trucks and the lorries from coming to the CBD. They should be able to use the bypasses. So that will ease the traffic. I agree entirely with the observations made that design is a major problem of our footbridges. You see, when you make a footbridge, don't make it from the engineering perspective. Design a footbridge from the user perspective. The final user is an old woman, an old man, a school-going child, and as Foster, who is actually the long-living citizen of Nairobi for 52 years, could agree, if the footbridges were user-friendly, a lot of people would want to use footbridges. But you realize some of them do not have security lights, some of them are not well guarded. So some of them, people have turned them into urinals and toilets. Yeah. Let us be realistic if we have to confront this problem. So we really have to change the attitudes of those people who use those footbridges as toilets, and they enforce the law strictly. Dixon has said what he said, we agree that we should promote the use of bicycles, but with caution. When motorbikes came, they hit us like a bang. Everybody was going for them. Now it created a crisis of management. How do we manage them? Somebody buys a motorbike today at 1, he trains for 30 minutes, and at 3 p.m. the same day, he's carrying 2 passengers. So let us be honest. Let us get even. We need motorbike riding, and even cycling is a highly specialized skill. So you need to acquire those skills to acquire the competence. But you cannot go today, you buy a bicycle, and you want to carry a 30 kilogram or 50 kilogram luggage behind you, and you don't even know how to ride it, then you become a nuisance to other road users, and it's a risk. So let us emphasize training, training, training. In all these sectors, we will need training. Mugogoteni, I agree, it is an NMT, but let us also agree that our Mugogoteni have never been improved. We can get them better. So that is an area, all of us, let us agree, that's an area that has been neglected. So the handcuts, if we can improve, so that we have an improved modern handcut that is small but can carry a heavy load, that is easily driven, that is user-friendly, we can do all that. We don't mind if you can even come with your horse. We can provide the backing. What we want is that we want to promote non-motorized, and non-motorized includes walking, handcart. You can use your horse if you have, so long as we use things that can decongest the city. I agree that urban design, we now have a pulse on urban design, my brother, because we have the integrated master plan for Nairobi. You read it, it's a good piece of document. It's a document that has engaged, it's not a boardroom document. It's a document that was gathered through soliciting views from members of the public. And you can agree that in terms of participation, Nairobi City County is very sensitive to residents association, residents themselves, or users. Before we do anything, we are always, we desire to engage to get the other perspective. Civil society, it's a fact that they have been neglected in this sector. But it's a good thing that we are ready and willing to engage them and then bring them on board, because we want ideas from all sectors. As I've told you, the transport sector, for it to move, we will need all sectors, the development partners, civil society, residents, and passengers. I agree with you that the land use has been problematic. Number one, because of the mentality to grab. People were grabbing anything free. Now the problem is that after they grab, and there is they assume user rights, that because they have occupied the land for some time, and when you want to construct a road 5 years down the line, they want to be compensated. That has been a major problem which is we are facing in Ngong Road and Outer Ring Road. But we are addressing those issues, and the construction will commence soon. So, Priscilla talked of roads are narrow and land grabbing, which I've answered. I agree, but really the major challenge in the roads is not because they are narrow, it's the attitude to use them. Because you just take Uhuru Highway, all the way from Museum roundabout, which used to be there, University Way, Nyayo House, Arambe Avenue, and the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. You realize that most drivers, even when they see that the front is not clear where they are driving to, they can never give you way. They will just rather drive and block you, and they become part of the congestion. So, and it is simple common sense. If you realize that where you are heading to, it is not clear, it's just simple common sense. Don't go. Give those people a chance who can be able to drive. And it is expecting too much to expect the governor or the minister for transport in Nairobi to be teaching people those common sense, simple common sense. So although simple common sense is not common, let us all agree that this is an area we need to educate our people, and the charity begins at home. For all of us who are here today as drivers, can we start practicing what we preach, that we give way if there is no clear exit? That is how simplistic our public awareness program should be. I agree with the gentleman, Patrick, who spoke from Tangeni, that there could have been insufficient information about the enforcement of food breaches. I agree because sometimes governments, we assume because we operate from a red carpet. So sometimes when we are driven, we are dropped there, we are picked. So this is a system that spoils us when we get honest. So sometimes we assume that things are working for everybody the way they are working for me. And if we use ourselves as a way of doing things, I can assure you that we can mess. So where we have done mistakes, we are sorry. But in the future, we will provide sufficient information and publicize the information. Help us also that we want to train our people to do things in the right way. Because our people apparently were used to the way city count used to carry people. You are walking and you realize you are being carried shoulder high, and you don't understand who is carrying you. As we don't operate like that, we are at least trying to be very civil and very honest with each other. If there's something we can do through discussion, we'll do it through discussion. When we resort to use of our inspectorate, it's a last resort. Like you see the matatu operations, the operations that are going on in the CBD, we have been telling people to be disciplined for 1 year. Personally, I've gone there to the drivers, and I've told them, unless you change your mentality and attitude, we will forcefully make you change. And now you can see, you've seen a lot of operations there. That's our directive, that now you either follow the law or you pack up. Because let me tell you, we can still streamline the CBD if we change our mentality and attitude. 60% of the congestion will go with the change of attitude. I agree with Engineer Wanjau that, no, I will deal with Foster first. Foster made some very few valuable remarks that the CBD is growing towards Thika, towards at River, towards Ngong. You see, that is the paradox of city growth. This city is a monster also, because it may end up consuming all the entire neighborhoods. Now, I agree entirely with you that we need more recreational facilities, and towards that end, we are working on creating a major recreational center in the Thika corridor and in the Embakasi area. We are identifying an area of 60 acres each in this area. We are ready to even buy where we may not have land, but in Embakasi we might have land. And we are creating 2 major recreational centers. We are also rehabilitating Nairobi Dam. It's it's almost 100 acres piece of land. We are going to excavate all the waste from there, restore the lake, and also create a major recreational park. Because we want Nairobians to be happy. The governor took power on account of making Nairobians happy. Engineer Wanjau has said that we are doing the major corridors from airport to Rironi. But that is something that will take about 6 years. The World Bank is supporting us. Let me tell you today, as we want to start our PRT as soon as next month, because we can administratively convert existing lanes which are not being properly used, and we make them public transport strictly, or people, vehicles which carry more than 3 individuals will use those vehicles. Then the people who want to ride alone and enjoy the drive can always take some time. So I believe I've responded to all issues that have been raised by me, and I'm very grateful, and I can assure you that you have people with a will, determination, and a commitment to enforce this recommendation. Thank you very much. So, Daktari, we are ready to operate a PRT system today, because we have what we call implied constitutional powers, which I can advise the governor to invoke, and we turn Mombasa Road, Thika Road, 1 lane, the inner lanes. We can turn them into a PRT lane as we develop a PRT system. Because a PRT system infrastructure will take us more than 10 years. Some of the challenges we are facing of congestion might not wait for 10 years. So we can convert Langata Road, the inner lane between 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. are only buses or public transport, strictly, or vehicles with more passengers. And then we give them priority. And we can do that for Thika Road, we can do that for Mombasa Road, and it's just a matter of deploying traffic marshals to that area and putting strict controls that those the people who will use those lanes or priority lanes will be public transport. So what we are saying is we have the will, we have the determination, we have the energy, we have the commitment, and we have the drive to make a difference as Nairobi City County Government. All we need is that we may have changed the governance structures at constitutional level, but I want you to appreciate that law and the policies are not self-implementing. It takes people, it takes actors to implement those policies and the law. And you have good actors. You have a good governor who likes new ideas, and you have a good minister who is proactive. Yes, I'm the most active roads minister in the country. So don't worry, bring the resources, we are ready to implement. That's what I wanted to say. The other thing is what my sister just raised, and this is about public awareness. Let me tell you, what is the attitude of Nairobi drivers towards a cyclist? It is contempt. Because they look at them as a nuisance. Because for a long time, they use the roads as personal property, not as a public utility. So when they see somebody cycling, they look at them as an irritant or a nuisance. We need to change this mentality and attitude to be positive towards cyclists and towards people who use motor riders. So, and as development partners, I'm urging you to support that sector of public awareness. We can create a public awareness model where we are going to engage in drama in every ward, in every sub-county, and we translate, we take this to the homes. Because we have a lot of good policies, but these policies might not be of help if the mentalities and attitudes is negative. And that is very critical. Why? Majority of our drivers are either standard 8 dropouts or they dropped out in Form 2. Because most of the consideration for a driver was never academic. It was how big is your chest and how physically fit you are. Let us be honest, that has been the qualification for a long time. So that is why there is a mess. But let us now also emphasize on not just physical health, but also even some background on appreciating a document, reading science and academic qualification. That will be really fundamental in terms of transforming the mentality, behavior, and attitudes. Those are the few remarks I wanted to say so that we now answer the sector questions.
Segregated the questions, and the members of our committee are here, so they will help us answer. I will ask Mark, our Vice Chair, to answer the issue of preferential access of vehicles on particularly Harambe Avenue, the issues that there are vehicles that seem to have not obeyed traffic laws and they do as they please and police oversee them. I will also ask him to deal with the issue of registration of cars to be tied to insurance renewals. I will ask Dixon Bugwa to answer the issue of involving the matatu industry to the solutions, and also the issue of phasing out the 14-seater matatus. That is his baby. I will ask Joyce to answer the question or deal with the question of incentives that can be given to non-motorized transport. How, according to our report, how people can be incentivized to walk and so forth. And I will ask Anne to deal with the issue of attitude change and integrity. And I will deal with the issue of the length of report, and we will answer them in that format. Yes, our report is long and repetitive because our report was about maintaining the fidelity of the answers of the people. Our data collection included information that came in from questionnaires given to about 3,000 people, from focus group discussions of people from certain sectors like the SACCOs, in-depth interviews with people who are in the industry like NTSA and KEPSA, presentations that were given to us by individuals and organizations, and also our literature review. And we are happy to say that most of the people say the same things. but we found it a little difficult to leave them what they said, because by documenting what they said, although it is similar, increases the fidelity of the report and shows that actually Nairobians think the same way. And also, it also helped us to look at best practices and to show that it converged. So I will ask Mark, then Dixon, then Joyce, then Anne.
Regarding preferential access of certain vehicles, and vehicles being given certain throughway, the law provides for that. You are supposed to give access to ambulances, vehicles for emergency services, if there is a need. If the sirens are blaring, you give them way because they are going to serve the public. And as drivers generally, you're taught that whenever you see a siren, you move to the side of the road, let the vehicle pass, because it is going to deal with an emergency somewhere. However, we have an issue, especially when we were doing the report and when we came to we collect views. Another issue that we found was that whenever His Excellency the President is moving around by road, there tends to be a lot of tailback congestion as a result of his movements. So we had a chat with the traffic commandant, and we asked them that at the point in time when we get to implement some of the recommendations of the report, like setting up an intelligent traffic and transport management system, we can try and figure out way in advance such that the President's movements do not clash with congestion generally in the city as it is wont to do. Regarding registration of vehicles to be tied to insurance renewals, that is worldwide best practices. When I lived in London for a period of about 7 years, that is what used to happen. You have your vehicle, you have your license, your insurance is tied to your license and to your address, and your premiums go down the better a driver you are. So I think I was informed the other day that the Insurance Regulatory Authority has encouraged the insurers now to start taking steps that way. And because the functions are now going to be devolved to a county level, especially when it comes to devolving registration and things of motor vehicles, it will be easier to manage and it will be easier to reward better drivers and to penalize harsher drivers, because then you can be able to tie licensing requirements to motor vehicles to the insurance, because also that will be a component of the intelligent traffic and transport management system, such that if you're the driver of the vehicle and you have the traffic lights with the cameras here, if you run a red light, it will capture your face, it will capture your plate, you'll get a ticket in the post. Yeah. So those are all things that were captured in the report, and they need to be implemented yesterday, basically, to solve some of the traffic problems or the traffic law issues that we have. I think that's it.
I've been ordered to answer questions on the 14th interface out, and also the Matatu terminus. Let me say this: when we were co-opted or asked to join this committee, there's one clear thing that we are to make, and that is shedding off our vested interest so that we can effectively participate in this research or making up of this decongestion committee report. And during the public hearing out there in various areas, we had the participant complain about the Matatu being the cause of the jam and what have you. So in our report, we have recommended that the terminus be created out there, out of the CBD, where the main corridor ends. Places like Ngara, we have Karioko, we have Kipanda Road, we also have Nyao roundabout, we have Uhuru Park, and so forth. So that when the county government brings in the 6 shuttle buses, which will be able to pick passengers from those terminals where they are dropped by the matatus, and then the city shuttles takes the wananchi or the passengers into the CBD. So I think that's the recommendation that we have done, and it's well endorsed in that report. The issue of the 14-seater phase out, yes, this has been a government policy since 2011, and it's ongoing, but on a slow pace, for one major reasons that the high occupant buses, that's 33-seater onward up to 51-seater, are very costly. It's not a walk in the park or in the supermarket in and out you come up with a unit. At the 3-seater bus now, we are talking is 5 million without insurance. Then 41 to 51 is 6 million without insurance. So you can imagine the cost of the vehicles makes the shift from the 14-seater into higher as slow, but it's taking place gradually. Actually, it has been targeted by next year, 2015, that we won't be able to have the 14-seater within the CBD. But I think they'll have to revise that unless they give seat funds for the same owner of 14-seater would want to upgrade to the higher quality vehicles. And in the rural areas, it's useful. Not as much as the head of state has also concurred with us, because the buses will be uneconomical on those areas. They take long to fill and they make maybe fewer trips, and hence they want to be able to service themselves in regard to paying the loans. So the policy is still on, supposed to end next year, but I think they are going to review. So that's as much as we should. Thank you.